Hi, I'm Shan Wu with the Under Color of Law hot take on credibility determinations. So there have been new allegations about the Matt Gaetz issues, and what we've heard today was from attorneys for two witnesses that had testified before the House Ethics Committee about having had sex for money with Representative Gaetz and also having been eyewitnesses to him having sexual relations with an underage girl. She was under the age of 18. Now I want to play you a clip of that attorney on a particular news channel with the anchor. And the anchor, who's actually a very good reporter, is really going to be pressing the lawyer about the credibility, and he'll get to the question of how come there's been no criminal charges. But initially, take a look at this, because at first the anchor has a little bit of trouble trying to make his point here. So we'll take a listen.
Would reasonable people call your clients escorts, call girls, college girls who had a side hustle? Give us a little more information.
You know, I'm here to tell you what they testified to the House, and when asked by the House, they declined to comment. One of them just said, "I'm just myself." The House is more concerned with whether or not those events could, actually happened than calling my clients' names.
I understand that, but you don't, I think we can all agree, you don't end up in these situations over and over again by accident.
Are you referring to Representative Gaetz or my clients?
I'm referring to your clients.
So there, the lawyer kind of came back pointing out, hey, you know, who's the one that keeps doing this over and over again? The anchor wants to make it sound like there's some character flaw maybe with the witnesses, but of course the real focus of the House Ethics Committee and what DOJ should have focused on and what we as the public would focus on is Matt Gaetz's behavior, not that of witnesses or the victim in the case. But in the next clip, you see that the anchor gets to the heart of what they're trying to get to, which is the issue of credibility.
It's pretty easy to figure out whether or not your clients are credible, because the Department of Justice, that also has all their testimony and would only have to meet the burden of proof of probable cause to charge Representative Gaetz. In addition, they have his cell phone that would have had the Venmo payments that you talked about. And the Biden Justice Department found your client so uncredible, they didn't charge him. Why do you think that is?
So the Department of Justice never found my clients not credible. They decided not to move forward on charges. In fact, the House, the Republican-controlled Congress and their own ethics committee found that the further investigation merited review because they had talked to enough folks that they found the evidence. That's their findings, not mine. So to say that the Department of Justice didn't go forward, you know, many prosecutors have never lost a case. I don't know why.
Now, there's something really interesting that the lawyer says at the end, the lawyer for the witnesses, and he is a criminal defense lawyer, so he understands kind of how prosecutors look at cases, what defense lawyers have to deal with. He has a really interesting quote there. He says, quote, "prosecutors who have never lost a case." So there are a couple reasons for why the prosecution tends to win more than defense does. He is suggesting that prosecutors tend to cherry pick their cases. They only are going to take on one where it looks like a real slam dunk for them. That's explained by a couple of things. First, government has a big advantage. They can build a case. They get the evidence ahead of time. They have a much stronger set of facts and evidence than the defense does. Defense is reacting to cases. So the prosecution has an advantage. They tend to have time to build a case. They have more evidence to gather. Cherry picking. Prosecutors do cherry pick. They only like to bring cases that seem really, really strong. Now, that is a question of what I've talked about often, which is prosecutorial discretion. It's not the same as credibility. I want to talk a little bit about that, because there's been leaked reports that DOJ did not charge Gaetz for what frankly seemed to me, as a former sex crimes prosecutor, a real slam dunk. And I'll say why it's a slam dunk in a moment. That they didn't charge him because they were concerned with the credibility of at least one witness, and it may have been they were concerned with the credibility of the underage witness. So first of all, let me explain why I think it's a slam dunk. When you're talking about what we used to refer to as statutory rape or sex with an underage person, that's what's known as a strict liability standard. There's no defense to that other than the fact that it didn't happen. It's not a defense to say that the defendant did not know the age. It's certainly not a defense to talk about what profession or whether the minor had previously engaged in sex or continues to engage in sex or got paid or anything like that. Totally irrelevant. It's a strict standard. If it happened, the defendant is liable for it. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. I think most folks know about that already, but that's really important to keep in mind when we're assessing what DOJ was doing here. The second issue goes to, what does that mean they were concerned about her credibility if that leaked report is true? Well, the anchor here is trying to make it sound like, well, the Justice Department found that your clients were not credible. That really doesn't happen. I've been a prosecutor in many sex crimes cases and declined to bring a few, not a lot, but a few. When you're judging the credibility of the witness, certainly if you think that the complainant or witness is simply lying to you, they've made this up, yeah, that's a problem. You're not going to bring the case. Most sex crimes prosecutors aren't going to say to a complainant, I think you're lying, I don't believe you. Why is that? First, it's very difficult just to call somebody a liar. It's just a human thing, it's hard to do. Second of all, as the prosecutor, that's not your business. You're not in the business of determining truth versus falsehood. You're in the business of ascertaining, does it look like there's a crime here that I can prosecute? Does it meet probable cause? And also, can I prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? Part of that is, how does the complainant or witnesses come across to the jury? That goes to how winnable the case is. If you think the person's lying to begin with, well, then you're not going to put them on if that's the only person who's coming forward and they seem totally out of it. They have no idea what they're talking about. They weren't even there that day. You're not going to get there. It's not really a credibility determination. There's no case. That gets blurred a lot, the question of how does credibility factor into discretion. Sure, it factors in if you totally don't believe the person, but what the anchor, what the lawyer's talking about, and what probably happened at DOJ, at least in my experience, is they're trying to figure out, is the case winnable? What kind of jury appeal does it have? There you run smack into the biases and prejudices against women who are reporting sexual crimes and biases about blaming the victim. Again, strict liability standard, right? If the victim's underage, you can't blame the victim. That's their age. There's nothing else that matters. And I have tried child sex abuse cases where the defense attorney is trying to sneak in stuff like, oh, she looked older than her age. That gets cut out in front of a good judge. You can't do that at all. The judge will tell people you can't even start to go down that path, and they try to do it during the trial, you cut it off. That's not an issue. It's not relevant. Either they were a minor or they weren't. So the problem here, and we don't know what else DOJ was looking at, but now with this new evidence that this attorney has come forward and said his clients testified under oath before the House Ethics Committee that they themselves, they were not minors, had sex for money, which is a crime, with Gaetz. What's the issue there? Why wouldn't that be prosecuted? And then that they observed Gaetz having sexual relations with the minor. There's no defense to that. DOJ would have to have concluded that these witnesses are completely non-credible. They're simply lying. Very unlikely that they concluded that, given that there are two of them, given the other evidence in the case corroborating whether Gaetz was there or not. So don't be fooled by the idea that, oh, they were just not credible witnesses. It's a bias to say women who were involved in any kind of a sex trade, who continued to have sex with a man or they got paid for it, that they're automatically lying. No, no, no. That may be a moral judgment people want to make. It doesn't go to the truth of what they're saying. Now, right now, the big controversy is how much are we ever going to see of what the House Ethics Report concluded and what they found, including the testimony of these witnesses. We've discussed before that there is precedent for them releasing the report, even though Gaetz is no longer a congressman. And there are groups who are pressing for that. We'll put up a link to a letter sent by Citizens for Ethics asking for the release of the report. And that same group is actually involved in litigation with DOJ to try to get them to explain their decision. Probably not going to have a lot of luck with that. DOJ is pretty wrapped in its tradition of not explaining their prosecutorial discretion. But you know what would really be good? Is if we all were able to change the attitudes that people have so that that wouldn't be necessary to try and dig at that. So there wasn't such a presumption against witnesses in certain circumstances like these women found themselves in. That's it for now. One thing I meant to say, I'm all dressed up today because I was on standby for TV and never made it on, but I was still all dressed up. But thanks for listening, and please keep those replies and comments coming. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.